Thank you for tuning in. You're in for an educational treat. What's the craziest thing you've seen unfold live on television before it could be taken off air/censored? The Challenger exploding when I was in elementary school. The whole school was watching it on TV in the auditorium. Weird fact about me, I was in the exact same room at a school when the Challenger exploded and then when the first plane hit on September 11th. For the Challenger, I was in my 4th grade classroom, and for 9/11, I was a teacher in that school in that classroom. Please never go back to that classroom again. We need to try to avoid future disasters. George Bush doesn't care about black people. Kanye West. I will never forget the look on Mike Myers' face. Chris Tucker's face was also priceless when they cut back to him. His eyes were so big, ha 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 ha. Do you understand the panic that is coming out of my eyes? When I was a kid, TV shows were interrupted all the time for high-speed chases and police standoffs. One time a helicopter was tracking a guy who was driving through a field. The driver hopped out of his van with a shotgun. The reporter was telling the helicopter to pan away from the shot, but they didn't. The driver then put the shotgun in his mouth and blew his head off on live TV. The camera cut and came back to the in-studio reporter who had a defeated WTF look on his face. I swear this led to less situations like this being shown on TV. Probably the reporter in a canoe covering how bad the floods were, and then two dudes walk through the puddle she's floating in. Runner up to the guy pretending there were hurricane force winds and bracing himself while yelling into the mic. Same thing happened, some dudes just kind of walked by in the background. Both times the poor reporters had to pretend it didn't happen, and both times it was absolutely hilarious, like that time on the Weather Channel when a tree fell in front of a reporter. It was obviously being thrown by a crew member. After Hurricane Katrina, the people stuck in at the stadium and gathered on a freeway overpass dying of thirst and hungry as hell. News saying the government didn't know where people were so they couldn't drop food and water. Was surreal because the news crews literally had the people on TV with captions of their locations, but nope. Both local and federal government couldn't figure it out. Yes, the Mayor Ray Nagin left for Houston. Blanco, the governor, didn't understand that she had to request federal assistance. So the feds were helpless, local government was completely inept, and it took days to get it help moving. I had relatives on a roof while Blanco was in a stupidity coma. The LA riots were really brutal to watch on television. They tried to not show any graphic violence, but sometimes it just happened. You saw a lot of footage of people looting and running up and down streets throwing things and hitting people, but nothing really bad until those men caught Reginald Denny stranded in his truck at an intersection. They smashed the truck windows and dragged him by his hair, I think, out of the truck and just stomped the ever-loving crap out of him, and the camera never moved. It was a news helicopter shooting down so you could see the entire intersection, and it legitimately looked like you were seeing a man beaten to death right on television. And then when you thought it was over, there was that kick and you just knew he was dead. You just knew no one could survive that, and it was so upsetting and terrifying to see that kind of unbridled violence take place live right in front of you. And then came the helpers. A few men, one of them a very large black man, came to Denny's rescue, and the attackers scattered like stray, vicious dogs, and they helped Denny. They saved his life. It was only a few minutes, but until 9/11 it was one of the most dramatic things I'd ever seen on television. This is so stupid, but I was a youngin' when it happened. A guy was holding up a sign on the Today Show, or some national morning TV show, that said "Marry Me Julia," or something like that. Willard Scott or Al Roker or someone went up to the guy and said, "Tell us a little about Julia." And the guy was like, "Nope, I'd rather marry Steve," and started making out on camera with the guy next to him. The host booked it and was like, "Okay, we on to the weather." Prior to then I'd never even heard about being gay, let alone seen anything like it. I'm not sure why that image stuck with me, though it was pretty shocking at the time. Shock tactics were part of the gay rights movement back then. They had to expose the world to the fact that gay people even existed. Still today many backwards nations deny having gay citizens. It wasn't so crazy as much as the impact of it was to television, but the Janet Jackson boob was so bizarre. It seemed completely planned and everyone was unsure as to what exactly was supposed to happen, but it seemed like something that wasn't supposed to. It was all very puzzling, and then the controversy started blowing up. I didn't see it, but I remember reading all about Owen Hart falling to his death on live television. If I had been watching, that easily would have been the craziest thing I've ever seen. Along with the saddest and absolute worst. Came here to say this. The Janet Jackson moment was so confusing, like, wait, what just happened? And I always found it wild that Janet was the one who got in trouble, when Justin seemed to do what he did completely on purpose. I mean, hello? It's the line of the song. He reached over and ripped her boob cover off while singing about "gonna have you naked" by the end of this song. You're right, it totally looked planned, and was very puzzling. As for the other one, only the live in-person audience saw Owen Hart fall. It happened off camera. During the TV special, a pre-recorded highlight reel was being shown at that moment. I wish I could provide the link. But it was a NHL game and one player fell and his skate cut the jugular of his opponent. Blood squirted out like a hose, staining the ice, sending him immediately to the locker room, and a full recovery was had. When I went to look it up the next day, I clicked on the first thing without checking and ended up with my first computer virus. Apparently, sick Fs like to frick with other sick ducks looking up someone else's demise. Lesson learned. This just happened a month ago, not sure if it was national news, but the Cincinnati Reds announcer, during the first game of a doubleheader, got caught on a hot mic using a gay slur. I had to rewind it to make sure I heard him correctly. During the next couple of hours, the sports world blew up on the internet, and he, presumably oblivious, finished calling the first game, then started the second game. Then around the fourth inning, he faces the camera and gives an apology for what he said, told the viewing audience he might never be back. And during his apology, a player hits a home run, and he calls the home run during his apology. And then he was gone forever. Not exactly an on-air suicide or whatever, but it was an incredibly bizarre situation. That time Randy Johnson vaporized a bird with his pitch. I was at a sports bar with my parents and half paying attention to the game when I saw the ball explode into a big puff of feathers. He has a photography business now, and uses a dead bird as the logo. I'm not even kidding. His Instagram bio for his company is hilarious. Had an above-average fastball. Lost it. I was watching a live broadcast in Texas. The reporter was saying that every year the police have to burn all of the drugs that they seize in all their drug busts. It was mostly huge piles of marijuana, probably a 10-foot high or so pile. The reporter was in the foreground and she mentioned that most of the police were off duty and volunteering to be there so that the blaze wouldn't get out of control. So all these police and this pile of weed are in the background and it is lit. As the pile starts roaring into a big bonfire, even I could tell that they were standing way too close to it. At least 30 or 40 police officers all standing really close to this bonfire with their backs to the camera. So this reporter decides to ask one of them a question and walks over and taps one of them on the shoulder. This high AF police officer turns around as this reporter is asking him something and he looks directly at the camera with these squinty red eyes and goes, "Wha the F?" Some places do this on purpose so if their officers are questioned in court they can testify as to how they know what burning marijuana smells like. When I was a kid I was watching the news and saw some people in Sarajevo, I think, being pulled off the back of a truck and shot. Teenage boys and men. Never forgot it. It was daytime and I think it might have been Live, the BBC or something, but it has stayed with me ever since. I also remember seeing news footage from Sarajevo. A family was in a graveyard for a funeral and snipers started shooting at them. I was 15 or 16 and started crying. My dad said, "Why are you crying? There's nothing you can do." And I looked at him and said, "Why do you think I'm crying?" But I see more what he means now. But still, that family, just because there is nothing you can do doesn't make it any easier to see. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.